Hard to envision a world where the Cowboys are ever irrelevant.
The Cowboys now are spiraling.
Not going to win a championship.
This is the time to rip the Band-Aid off.
Me personally frustrated. I'm frustrated myself with my play.
We've seen frustrating years, and this is one of them.
It's proper frustrations. We've got to look at all the things that have happened. Everybody's got a role in this.
Woo, the Cowboys offense went from one of the best in the NFL in 2023 to one of the worst in 2024. They ranked top 6 in points per game, efficiency, total QBR, and yards per play 2 years ago, and then ranked 25th or worse in those categories last season. Now, granted, Dak Prescott did miss 9 games last season. However, he ranked 26th in total QBR before getting hurt. So back to Mike Tannenbaum's latest mock draft, where he has Dallas getting a weapon for that offense. Ted McMillan, the wideout from Arizona. I like it. Mike, with all the needs on that roster, why'd you go wide receiver there with their earliest pick?
Laura, his game really reminds me of Keyshawn Johnson. If you look at Dak Prescott's best year in 2021, he had an in-the-prime CeeDee Lamb and an in-prime Amari Cooper. And look at these numbers. And to me, if I'm Jerry Jones and I'm looking at this graphic, guys, I need a bookend to CeeDee Lamb. And when you look at Tannenbaum McMillan, who had 33 catches down the field when the ball went 20 yards or more, that sort of like catch radius is a perfect complement to CeeDee Lamb. I actually also think he's be good in the running game, which is important to Brian Schottenheimer. I like his length, and again, his rare size. What a great compliment, in my opinion, to CeeDee Lamb. And now this offense has a much better chance of elevating the quarterback, which is job one in Dallas.
I love with the comparison to Keyshawn Johnson, a guy 6'5", can go up and get the ball. Not going to be the fastest guy, but when you talk about being opposite CeeDee Lamb, they were in a conversation for Cooper Kupp. We thought they may go that route. They haven't gotten another receiver, so I love the fact that they're adding another weapon to that offense, because we said it all last year. They were an offense that didn't move around a lot. They stood in the same spots, and there's so much pressure on Dak Prescott to be able to get the ball on the outside to CeeDee Lamb with what safeties and cornerbacks are doing. So a guy like Ted McMillan, what I love is the explosiveness. A guy that can get down the field, can make plays, and when you're that big and that physical, guys are going to have to be aware of you.
Yeah, he has a volleyball background. You kind of saw it on that highlight rip right there, right? It's kind of just like serve it up and let him spike it. In the case of football, it would just be catch those touchdowns in the end zone. Clocked around a 4.55 at his 40 during his pro day, so not going to have a blazing 40 time for a wide receiver, but too productive. Over the past 2 seasons, only one receiver in all of the FBS had at least 1,300 receiving yards. If you're guessing it's Tannenbaum McMillan, you guessed correctly. So regardless of how impactful the offense was for the team, they had a bad year this past season. T-Mac was the one thing that you could count on. And the Cowboys have, as we know, a lot of needs right now. But one of the realities for Dallas is that while they have a lot of needs, they also have a few blue chip players who are either already at the top of the market for their position contract-wise, Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb, or will soon be there, a la Micah Parsons. When you have players at premium positions being paid top of the market money, you have to continue to draft premium positions rather than going somewhere like running back with number 12 overall, because as we know, running back is probably the most fungible position in the entire league right now. I like the Cowboys either going offensive line or wide receiver at 12.
Yeah, especially in this draft when you could get one later. Let's talk about the Eagles, the Super Bowl champs. And they obviously lost some players in free agency that had people raising their eyebrows. You see him right there taking Gray Zabel. What do you think, Mike T? O-line, a really important spot to fill there for the Eagles.
Yeah, Mekhi Becton graduated. He went to the Chargers. I mean, we're nitpicking here. They're so deep. And look, to me, Gray Zabel, play tackle at North Dakota State. I think he has the ability to slide inside. I think he has that Eagle sort of toughness. I think he fits in well and may even be able to start as a rookie.
Yeah, when a guy plays at North Dakota State, the biggest question is always going to be how will it look against superior competition. He went down to the Senior Bowl in Mobile. He looked like the best player on the field. So how's that for a statement as far as whether he can hang with the big boys? He was borderline flawless in those one-on-one drills, which I get it. Those aren't a perfect facsimile of what it's like, but it's one of the closest to reality drills that we have during a week of practice at the Senior Bowl. My only objection with the pick is I think he might be long gone by 32. Too many teams that prioritize that zone running scheme on offense are going to find Gray Zabel as a hands and glove fit, ready to play right now. 5 years of college experience. Sign me up somewhere in the teens.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you're saying the Eagles are so deep, you have to go need at their spot. And if it's not guard replacing Mekhi Becton, then I look at the edge rusher, Brandon Graham, a guy that's been a staple for them. He decides to retire. You have Nolan Smith. You have Jelix Hunt on the outside. Bryce Huff didn't quite work out. You need some depth. Shamar Stewart's of the world, whether he's gone or not, you have him gone a little bit earlier, but gone. going edge or maybe defensive tackle replacing Milton Williams, to me, keeping that D-line as a strain.
Let's quickly go to the Commanders, because I like what you did there with Max Harrison, who we talked about earlier on in the show. What was the thought?
Yeah, Max Harrison, I like his speed, and when you look at what they need, Marshawn Lattimore is much closer to the end. Prior regime missed on Emmanuel Forbes. To get to where they want to go, they're going to have to cover receivers, and I think Harrison has that ability.
All right, time for one more thing before we go. This is really funny. Check out this potential #1 overall pick, Cam Ward. The Titans have become increasingly impressed with Ward, and while they're expected to listen to offers for #1 overall pick, it would now take a stronger package to acquire the draft's top selection. So something to keep an eye on. And here's everybody. Field Yates. We got Jason McCourty. We got Mike Tannenbaum. Of course, again, we're going to be all into your mock in a little bit. But Field, is Ward that guy, or are the Titans trying to drive up the price here for that #1 overall pick?
Well, really no harm in that information being made public now, right? Because Cleveland or the New York Giants or other teams that might want to make a move up to the #1 pick now know if they're going to do so, they got to make some serious offers. That being said, Laura, I think that one of the things that maybe there's been a little bit of a disconnect with this quarterback class throughout the process is this. You know, I think we've talked about this quarterback class relative to last year and felt like it has been less than inspiring. I'll say this. I do think the league views it as Cam Ward's the real deal. He is the truth and a guy that justifies that #1 overall pick for Tennessee given their circumstances. And while some still believe he might be more closer to like the 5th or 10th best prospect in this year's class, there are enough people around the NFL that I've talked to that feel like this kid has some serious potential, that he's got some wizardry to him that makes him not just a worthy #1 overall pick this year, but perhaps in several other years as well, Mike.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Phil. You look at what Tennessee has done all offseason. They've added Dan Moore at left tackle. They signed Kevin Zeitler. I think they're taking Cam Ward. It looked that way for months for me. And I had the good fortune of working with Bill Callahan, the head coach's father, in New York for several years. And he's a rule-based, attention-to-detail coach. That's what they want in Tennessee. And when you watch the way Cam Ward plays, he has great fundamentals. He has great poise in the pocket. And one thing, guys, in particular that I like, when the ball travels 20 yards or more down the field, he has 12 touchdowns and no interceptions. That's really remarkable. That shows great downfield accuracy. I think this is an absolute no-brainer for Tennessee to take Cam Ward.
Yeah, I looked at what he did in his pro day, and you see him rolling out to the left, turning around, making a throw. I don't think he could come down those stairs the same way Laura did to start the top of the show. But for Cam Ward, it's been fantastic to just watch his rise. Phil, to your point, early on in this process, we started saying it was him and Shador who was going to be the guy, and Cam Ward has just skyrocketed. You can talk about the poise in the pocket and the plays that he makes. I love the off-schedule stuff as much as I love what he does in the pocket, because as a player specifically on the defensive side of the ball, when you have a playmaker, a guy that brings so much hope to your offense, it does so much. So I look at this for the Tennessee Titans. I was there when they drafted Marcus Mariota and Jake Locker in the first round. You're getting a guy here now at #1 who is the real deal and can change the entire organization.
By the way, Laura, you did that. No pro day, no private workout. You just dominated those stairs.
You guys are too nice. We're all waiting for the day that I fall. I will celebrate it. I did want to say this about Cam Ward. When you're talking about #1 overall pick caliber, they do look at the personality of the player. This guy is the real deal in that way, too. He loves to fish. He is not going to give you any sort of problems or anything like that. He's a great leader of men. All right, we did talk about the mock draft that Mike Tannenbaum released today. This is fresh off the press, okay?
Good,
this
Mike.
morning it came out. And you agree. You've got Cam Ward going #1 overall to Tennessee. So let's pick up with your mock in Cleveland's decision at #2.
Yeah, Laura, Travis Hunter, to me, I would have him as a corner, University of Colorado. I think he's a transformational player. As Field has alluded to in the past, he's averaged somewhere between 114 and 115 plays per game. I think he can high point the ball. I would sprinkle in about 15, 20 plays per game at wide receiver, where he's going to give Jason McCourty all sorts of issues. Third down and red zone. Now you're going to have a premium player at corner and a point scorer at receiver. At the Giants, I'm taking his teammate, Shador Sanders, quarterback, Colorado. I like Shador Sanders. I think he has a high floor, maybe not the highest ceiling. I've comped him to Kirk Cousins, who's had a very good career. What's his best attribute is his toughness. He's been sacked 94 times over the last 2 years. He's missed one game. If the four of us were running an NFL team, one of our concerns would be over the last 2 years, 59 quarterbacks have started a game and 66 quarterbacks have started a game. The fact that he's been able to answer the bell despite being sacked all those times tell me he has rare toughness.
Yeah, I like you calling that part out. Field, are you okay as we go back to the number 2 pick in the mock here with the Browns passing on a quarterback and taking Travis Hunter?
Yeah, Laura, I am. If this were my decision, I would be doing the exact same thing that Mike T did for the Browns, drafting Travis Hunter, who I believe is the clear-cut best player in this year's draft class because of the versatility, the natural playmaking, and I think really the rare upside as a wide receiver on top. I think he's been a great corner as well, but the wide receiver upside is tremendous. Also, this is different than the New York Giants, so we'll talk about more in a little bit. It does not feel like the Browns are tethered to adding a young quarterback in this year's draft because this is a make or break year for Cleveland. It's an important year, to be clear. When you finish off last season like they did, there is some inherent pressure, but you got to have conviction on the player if you're taking them number 2 overall at this quarterback spot and bypassing a guy in Travis Hunter, who I really believe we could be talking about this as the Travis Hunter draft for the next decade plus, Jason. So I am okay with the Browns going in this direction. If it were the Giants, I might have different feelings.
And I agree with you, and a lot of that has to do with Stefanski, the head coach and play caller. We watched him 2 years ago have his team in the playoffs with 4 or 5 different starting quarterbacks, and Flacco taking over coming off the couch. So I look at this. They've already traded for Kenny Pickett. Russell Wilson was there on a visit. You can bring in another veteran and have a stud like Travis Hunter. You mentioned that cornerback spot. As I look at just the teams in the top 4 or 5, I look at the New England Patriots, the Cleveland Browns. If they're drafting a guy like Travis Hunter with a hole on that offensive side of the ball, that wide receiver, I think he makes a major impact from day one of coming there and just being a difference maker of a guy with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and again, you can find the quarterback. You know, you go back to 2004, guys. The Bengals took A.J. Green with 4. Then they came back at the top of the second round. They took Andy Dalton. Yeah. That was the foundation for teams that made the playoffs quite a few times. So I agree with Jason because he agreed with me. But take the blue chipper there, come back and get the quarterback sooner than later.
It won't happen a lot. So.
I was going to say, that's how you get Mike T on your side. You just agree with him no matter what it is. All right, so as Field talked about, no quarterback for Cleveland. That means the Giants can then take Shedeur Sanders at number 3. Field, you like this move for New York?
Yeah, I think they have to. This is a circumstances-driven decision by the New York Giants. Let's just talk about the reality of what they are facing this year. It is a make-or-break season for the New York Giants in 2025. There are 2 ways to make it and not break it. One would be you get great veteran quarterback play. Well, even if you do add Aaron Rodgers, who seems like the most logical top available veteran option, he's 41 years old. You got to have an eye towards the future as well. You don't plan on picking 3rd overall every single season. There's only one other quarterback in this class that I think provides that beacon of hope that you need, that even if you do add another veteran quarterback, if things start slow with that veteran, you hand the keys over to Shedeur Sanders, and your success this year, the way that you make it as the Giants head coach and GM, is not by winning a ton of games. That would be great, but it's showing that you can develop this player and that Shedeur Sanders is going to be the guy that can eventually get you back to the winning ways that this organization takes its pride in.
And to your point, John Mara, when he talked about Joe Shane and Brian Dable coming back, he made it seem like those guys were on hot seats and they have to perform this year. So I look at a Shedeur Sanders. He, to me, has the moxie and a personality that fits being a New York Giants quarterback, handling the media, everything that comes along with that. And then his accuracy. I think when you're talking about being a quarterback at this level, you have to put the ball where it needs to be on time. Now, he's going to have to rush in the pocket a little bit more than what he did at college, those sacks that you're talking about. But I think he gives him an opportunity to just solidify that position and not play a plethora of guys, which they did last year.
Back, I look at it, he is stabilizing the position. If the 4 of us were writing the Giants, we're looking at Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, and Jaden Daniels probably for the next 10 years. Yeah. Shedeur may not have the upside of some of them, but he stabilizes the position with accuracy, anticipation, and toughness. To me, maybe it's not ideal at 3, but at least it solves the problem.
I like the point you made, too, about him fitting in that New York market. He's not going to be scared of it. He's not going to shy away. All right, now one quarterback is already on the New York depth chart, and that's Jameis Winston, who's having himself a good old time down in Mexico this week.
Water family. You seem like the ringleader. Right now, I'm using my negotiation tactics. I'm Jameis Winston. If you got a problem, come talk to me. Okay? Don't turn your nose up at me. These quarters, they've been messing with the classic. Okay, they've been stealing from our guys. They've been eating food from our guys. That's Jermaine back there. Jermaine is right there with Rishi. Go get your auntie. I can't talk to you no more.
I feel like they were really picking up what he was putting down there. J-Mac, how's Winston going to play in New York?
Well, we just said that Shedeur fits. I don't know if there's a better fit in whatever market you want to have than Jameis Winston. He needs to have a reality TV show, Bring Shador over. Dion can come visit whenever they don't have a game. I think it is just TV that we all would have to see.
Man, that quarterback room would be something else if that ends up going that way. We'll see. We're just getting started. NFL Live, some stories around the NFL. We're going to start in New England. Okay, so the Patriots have been active this offseason with their deals adding up to the most guaranteed money a team has spent so far. They added to their defensive line with Milton Williams, their secondary with Carlton Davis, their linebacking core and Harold Landry and Robert Spillane. They also gave Drake May some help on offense with the additions of Morgan Moses, Garrett Bradbury, and Mac Hollins. So Elliott Wolf, the Patriots executive vice president of player personnel, spoke to the season ticket holders on Sunday. He was asked if the team felt the need to fill a specific need in the draft. Wolf responded saying, "No, we don't. The best player available is going to be the way it is," he said. "Maybe we went for need a little bit too much last year. Obviously, that culminated in us drafting Drake May, so it wasn't all that bad. But just moving forward, it's taking the best player and understanding that we've filled a lot of needs already in free agency." Interesting. So Drake May was on the Up and Adams podcast where they talked about the decision in the next month's draft.
What would you like to see it for, Drake? You, not the front office. What would you like to see it for in the draft?
You take the best player. I think in that early, take the best player available. So, any one of those guys, I don't want to, put my foot in my mouth here. So just whoever wants to come play in New England and win some football games.
All right, let's check in on Mike T's mock. He has them passing on best available. That would be Abdul Carter, and instead drafting for need on that O-line, taking Armand Mimbu out of Missouri. I like it, Mike. Why do you have New England going O-line instead of grabbing a guy that many believe is the most talented in the draft?
Yeah, I see this very similar to when Jim Harbaugh drafted Joe Alt a year ago. It's more of a statement. And you look at what New England's done, and they have had a good offseason. But right now, Jason, they would drive to the stadium, and Verdarian Lowe is their left tackle. Drake May was sacked 52 times last year. They were 28th in pass block win rate. Armand Membo, he played mostly on the right side. I think he could flip to the left side. You need somebody to protect Drake May's blind side. Nothing else matters for this franchise. If he's not healthy, cancel the season.
And sometimes for a quarterback, I look at it as your best friend can be a pass rusher on the other side, and you can run the ball on offense to slow down that pass
Spoken like
rush.
a defensive player.
I look at Abdul Carter. He's still on the board. When they're up there at 4, they have to go out and get him. And I look at the Patriots. They have a lot of needs when you look across that roster. And edge rusher is one of them. They could use a guy like that that can get after the quarterback. Listen to Elliott Wolf. You think about it a year ago. Yes, they draft Drake May, but they also go offensive line with Robinson, and they get Wallace over there, wide receiver, and Polk and Baker. And as you watch that team offensively last year, they couldn't do much of anything. So I think for them, getting the best available player, Abdul Carter, if he's there, will definitely be a home run.
Let's go back to the Super Bowl. Like, you had one team that was dominant with their offensive tackles in the Philadelphia Eagles, and the other team struggled despite having Superman at quarterback. Like, to me,
you know why he struggled?
Yeah, because of the pass rush. Yeah, exactly, because they didn't have the tackles to defend the pass rush.
I love how this we could keep doing that over and over. I just quickly, do you agree that Abdul Carter is the best player available in this draft?
I would go with Travis Hunter just because I think what he could do is transformational. I think Abdul Carter is going to be great. This is not about that. It goes back to my first draft as GM. We took the Brickashaw Ferguson and Nick Mangold, 2 foundational players for about a decade. And again, if you're New England, if you don't have a left tackle, you have no chance.
Must have been a smart GM over there. That was good stuff.
We're trying to beat teams like his.
Yeah, I love it. All right, we continue our read and react. We're going to turn our focus to Denver. Their pick at 20. Interesting stuff here. Mike T has the Broncos taking running back Omarion Hampton out of UNC, a rare second running back going in the top 20 picks. But these really are 2 super talented guys. Ashton Genty, of course, the other one. The Broncos didn't have a lead back last season. Javonte Williams, who's now a Cowboy, averaged the most rush attempts on the team with just 8.2. The committee of Williams, Jaleel McLaughlin, Audric Estime, they ranked in the bottom 10 in rush yards per game. So Denver has not had a running back rush for 1,000 yards since Philip Lindsay back in 2019. Mike, why running back for Denver?
Well, when you look at what Sean Payton's building, guys, it's sort of like New Orleans West, right? They have Bo Nix. They added Evan Ingram. I think, in my opinion, Omarion Hampton could be a lot like Alvin Kamara. Not the 1,600 yards. He's an explosive runner. The 38 receptions. You have to be a 3-down back to play for Sean Payton. And when you look at, they lost Javonte Williams. They really didn't replace him. I think he's explosive. He could break tackles. And I think the way Sean Payton wants to control the game field, Omarion Hampton is an unexpected opportunity for them.
Yeah, well, what's going to happen with Bo Nix this year as he enters year 2 is teams are going to say, you can throw on the outside on the perimeter. We're going to challenge you to throw between the hashes. That's what you see from these quarterbacks as they evolve. It's a lot easier to throw on the perimeter when there's less interference and less opportunity for interceptions or negative plays. As a result of that, the Broncos are going to need some easy button drives, and Omarion Hampton would provide them with some explosive runs. A 4.46 640 at 220 pounds. This guy's got some home run hitting juice in him. He's not quite as elusive as Ashton Jeanty, which is why, to me, the conversation is Jeanty and then a big gap to the next running back. But in this year's class, he has that big play potential that was on display over the past 2 seasons at North Carolina. 1,500-plus rushing yards in each of them. Last year, meaning the 2023 season, he had Drake May by his side. There was much more of a threat in the passing game. This past year, North Carolina's offense took a big step back. Hampton shouldered a huge load and still managed a ton of production, despite the fact that the game plan was find a way to slow down 28, and you've got a chance.
Yeah, I agree with you that Ashton Jeanty's in a class all of his own. So let's kind of take him out of this question. But knowing that it is such a deep running back class, is 20 a little too high for you to take a back?
It's slightly above where I have Omarion Hampton ranked on the overall big board. He's at 26. And I do feel like that's going to be one of the dynamics that a lot of teams are measuring right now is that it's not that Omarion Hampton isn't a great player. It's that you might get a comparable value 30 picks later. You might get a player just a notch below 60 or 70 or even 80 picks later. As of right now, I've got 29 running backs with a draftable grade in this year's class. This is way deeper than just last season. And oh, by the way, of those 29, you could see close to 10, maybe even more on the first 2 days of the draft. There's so much value for teams that are willing to be patient.
I think that's all a fair point. If Omarion Hampton didn't catch the ball as effectively as he did, I would agree with that. But when you're a 3-down back and have 3-down skill sets, something that Sean Payton puts a premium on, I think the value is too good to pass up.
Especially if he thinks he's Kamara-esque. So he's got Tennessee taking Cam Ward as the first overall pick. Over the last 3 seasons, the Titans quarterbacks had the second to worst total QBR in the NFL. They need a change, okay? Mike's got Shedeur Sanders going to the Giants at number 3. Over the last 5 seasons, the Giants have 7 fewer passing touchdowns than any other team in the NFL. He then has Jackson Dart as the 3rd quarterback off the board, going to the Rams at 26. Matthew Stafford under contract with the Rams for 2 more seasons, but Dart could be the next man up. I like this. It's interesting. Mike, we had Dan Orlovsky tell us he thinks this Rams roster is Super Bowl caliber after free agency. I can't believe Dan's making the show. He's not even here. But that's what he said about him. Why do you think quarterback makes sense for them in the first round?
I've never heard Dan say anything good about the Rams or Matt Stafford.
I mean, he doesn't even like them.
Yeah. Look, here's why. And again, I'm not comparing Jackson Dart to Patrick Mahomes with the statement, but if you go back a couple of years ago with Kansas City, they went to the playoffs with Alex Smith, and opportunistically they traded up for Patrick Mahomes. The rest is history. If I am the Rams, they have done a great job with all that great young talent on defense. If we, the 4 of us, were running the Rams, we have to assume that Matt Stafford is a year-to-year proposition. If you can get Jackson Dart, who led the NCAA in yards per pass attempt, which tells me he gets the ball down the field, as we're looking at here, he has great upside. And you could pair Jackson Dart on a rookie contract, guys, with Sean McVay, sign me up. And when Matt Stafford comes in next year, I'm dealing from a position of strength, not weakness.
Yeah, and the 26th overall pick at a quarterback is a relatively low risk, right? I mean, so many of these quarterbacks are going in the first 2 to 3 picks, as we know, year in and year out. Jackson Dart is such an interesting prospect. You know, I think there's a real strong chance that Jackson Dart ends up in the first round. I like Jackson. I've got a 2nd-round grade on him. People are probably wondering, if you've got a 2nd-round grade, why do you think he's going to go in the first round? Well, first of all, supply and demand, right? Yeah. There are more teams that want a quarterback than there are quarterbacks available. On top of that, what I would say from Jackson is if I were to tell you why I'm not fully sold is that in flashes, in doses, you see it from Jackson Dart. It reminds me of, and I can't relate necessarily to this person, but the golfer that every once in a while shoots 75. Most of the time hovers more like around like 80, 85, maybe 90. If they're playing with me,
where are you
really that close. Yeah, more like 110. But that's okay. It's a long off-season ahead, we hope. Anyways, Jackson, you know, it's like you see it for flashes, right? And then there are other plays in which you see him straining to drive the football down the field, right? It's a much different offense playing at Ole Miss than it would be at the NFL level. I think Sean McVay is a brilliant quarterback tutor. I'd have a lot of confidence if he landed in Los Angeles. Just not fully sold that Jackson Dart is what you would quote-unquote first-round quarterback talent.
Yeah, and you can talk about the toughness and the different intangibles that he brings, a better athlete than a lot of people give him credit for. if I'm a person or a player on that Rams team, my issue is, yes, that Chiefs team went to the playoffs that year before. This Rams team was a player or two away from possibly beating the Super Bowl champs. So at the end of the first round, if we can get a cornerback or a linebacker, somebody that can come out there and help us this year. We already made the commitment to bring Matthew Stafford back. If I'm on that roster, like, we need to be going for another Lombardi. Yes, build for the future, but with a team this talented right now, I feel like let's go get a player that can help us this year.
Yeah, Mike, let's live in that world. At 26, who would be a nice player available there that could be maybe a cornerback, somebody on the defensive side?
Yeah, look, we're talking about like Max Hairston, amongst others. You could certainly get, Mourier, the safety from South Carolina. I mean, there's a number of holes on this team that you could certainly fill. I just want to go back to what Field said about the inconsistencies that we see in Jackson Dart's game. That's the job description of a great head coach that you have in Sean McVay. So, Jason, I would push back to say, like, you have all that great young talent, and what happens if you got a younger version of Matt Stafford? Doesn't that set you up for sustainability?
It possibly does, but the thing is, while you're setting it up, you now have Jimmy Garoppolo back on the contract. You have Matthew Stafford back. So now our first-round draft pick, he's sitting, which could be great for the future. If I'm in year 10 and I'm not going to be here for the future and I'm a player on that roster, I want to win right now. But in your seat as a general manager, I'm trying to make sure my kids continue to go to high school here for the next 4 years, so I understand it.
My 2-round mock draft drops next week. No spoilers, but a little bit of a spoiler here. Max Hairston will be heavily considered for the Rams in that first round. He has outstanding ball skills and 4.28 speed. He was the fastest player at the Combine. I'm wondering what kind of that must have been a cool flex for J-Mac a few minutes ago when he talked about how the Rams were just a play or so away from playing in the Super Bowl. Because, like, he literally prevented them from making one play in the Super Bowl to win the Super Bowl.
I almost forgot about that play. I appreciate you bringing that back up.
Listen, I still live in the New England area. It's brought up like literally every 30 seconds, so forever a legend.
Should we bow down?
Bow at the altar.
I'm never going to say no to
that. Okay, I'm going to stay down here. I absolutely love it. Again, Fields mock coming out, what do you say, next week?
Next Wednesday.
Can't wait for it. All right, still to come after he won in Minnesota.
We as a fan base or even media found out, like, you're the guy recently. When did you know? When did they tell you, or when was that message to you?
They haven't told me, and I'm happy they didn't, because I try to earn it every single day, and I never want that to be given to me, and it's such a privilege and opportunity to give me that chance, and I'm just going to make the most of it every single day.
Okay, I'll just start by saying I love what J.J. McCarthy said. Jason, do you like how Minnesota is handling this, though?
I'm waiting to hear who the veteran quarterback is that they're going to sign. We heard that it's not Aaron Rodgers as of right now. So, my team, like, what's holding him up from going out and getting a veteran? It's only Brett Rippon that's on the roster right now. So, if you're J.J. McCarthy, he said all the right things. But at the end of the day, he's QB1 right now because there is nobody else on the roster that you would expect for him to compete against. So, he has handled this. If I'm a guy in that locker room and you're a young quarterback who hasn't played a snap in a regular season game, if that's his mindset, you absolutely love it. They got to go get another guy there.
Yeah, J-Mac, and maybe, we see the name Ryan Tannehill. At this point, maybe they just want to get through the draft and see if maybe a quarterback falls in their lap at some point, and opportunistically they have to take him. But I would think at some point they should get a veteran, make J.J. McCarthy the starter. You got to remember, they traded up for him. They moved on from a very productive Sam Darnold. So at some point, it is pretty obvious, like, he is their future. And I do think a backup quarterback at some point is very sensible.
Yeah, and by the way, if you talk to Kevin O'Connell, Josh McCown, they love J.J. McCarthy. So there's no love lost there for sure. Field, this team was 14-3 last season. Do you like how they're handling the quarterback situation?
Well, first of all, JJ, I have some news for you. They actually did tell you that you're the starting quarterback because they haven't signed anybody, and it's whatever it is, March 29th or whatever date. March 25th. My apologies to the calendar. I don't pay much attention to time these days, as you can tell. I think we're a month away from the NFL draft. So the actions, I think, are much more important than the words here for J.J. McCarthy. This team made their bet last year on J.J. McCarthy when they made that small move up from 11 to 10 to take him. And at the time last year, while Sam Darnold ended up playing remarkable football, none of us sat there when they signed Sam Darnold last year and said, boom, they've got the answer to the guy who's going to take them to a 14-3 season, one of the best records in the entire NFL. They feel very confident in the infrastructure that is in place in Minnesota. And on top of the infrastructure, if I'm a young quarterback, find me a better group of pass catchers you'd like to play with, along with that offensive line. It's an elite setup for a guy like J.J. McCarthy.
I mean, we thought that last season. Whoever they were going to draft in last year's draft, we're like, all right, that quarterback has the best situation. All right, Mike, you ready for your seat to get a little bit hot right here? We're gonna ask Mike T. With your mock draft out today, we're gonna put you on the hot seat, ask you some questions. So, Field, you get the honors to go first.
Yeah, Mike T. There is not a single team that has yet traded its first-round pick. Could you identify a team that could move up from round 2 into the end of round 1 to potentially take a 4th quarterback off the board?
Yeah, depending on what happens up here, I think it's Cleveland and the Giants. So to me, it's really either of those teams. Now, if it goes exactly like this, which of course it should, a team like Cleveland should take Travis Hunter and then move back up to the bottom of the first round. We're going to hear a lot of the name Tyler Shugg from Louisville. He's going to be 26. He was ironically Justin Herbert's backup going back to Oregon. He's only played one full season, but has tons of upside. Those realistically would be those two teams I would keep an eye out for.
Yeah, I think people need to keep in mind, by the way, that when you're looking at the end of the first round, the threat to Cleveland or New York is not one of these teams taking a quarterback. The upside is you have a 5th year of contract control, which we have seen become very valuable with quarterbacks now making $60 million per year. And then on top of that, if you're Cleveland and you're the New York Giants, and neither of those teams that had a quarterback at the beginning of the draft, they're both thinking that at some point the other one is going to make its move. So you're kind of competing against each other without knowing the concrete plans. Cleveland makes a lot of sense, and Tyler Shugg is that name that you hear most frequently linked at the back end of the first round.
All right, I want to zero in on what the Cardinals are doing. You have them picking Matthew Golden, a wide receiver I love out of Texas. Got to cover a lot of his games, but that would mean, so last year they take Marvin Harrison Jr., so back-to-back years of wide receivers in the first round. What's the thought there?
You got to make Kyler Murray successful, and look, Marvin Harrison should be great. I think Matthew Golden actually plays to his time speed. He was the fastest wide receiver at the Combine. He's a great route runner, 2 years at Houston before going with Texas, and in highly consequential moments like Arizona State in the bowl game, they went to Matthew Golden with all these other weapons. So if you could have a great route runner with great hands, Laura, who can run fast, what a great compliment to an emerging superstar in Marvin Harrison. Ask the Cincinnati Bengals. Like, I'm not saying it's T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, but I'm saying, hey, maybe it's not.
I think you brought up a good point there about how clutch he was when Texas needed him most. It's not just flashy speed and the skill set. He's got that in him where he performs when it matters most. All right, J-Mac, your turn.
I'm always fascinated by it. We see who teams select and how they get to that process. But, Mike T., you've been in that seat before. For a general manager, when you're on the hot seat, you know your job this next season is going to decide that. Does that change the way you go about the process of who you select maybe best available versus need?
Yeah, I think you always have to be opportunistic, and you want to have your board set. I'll go back to 2016 and tell you a story. The #1 player on our board was Laramie Tunsil. We had a good left tackle in Brandon Albert. We had a gazillion needs that year in Miami. Defensive line, corner. Laramie Tunsil had a bump in the road. He was the best player on the board. We took him at 13. He's gone on to have a great career. So, J-Mac, even though we had other needs in mind, we took the best player. And even if you're on the hot seat, look, you're going to lean a little bit towards need. But when you take the best player available over time, that works out more times than not.
You handled the hot seat really well just now. Good job, Mike.